Hey guys, I want to talk about a fascinating experiment that I ran across a long time ago, and it's affected the way I think about dogs and dog training ever since then. And so I'm going to give you the setup for it. You have dogs who have all been trained to play with a puzzle toy that it's transparent so the dog can see that there's food in there. And they've been trained to play with it, manipulate to get the food out. And then when they bring them in for the testing, they do a couple of things. Number one, they rig the toy so it will not produce a piece of food. It's transparent so the dog can still see there's food in there. He can still smell the food in there, but he can't get it out, right? And then they broke the dogs into two groups. And one group had to do a 10-minute stay by themselves. It wasn't a group stay, but one group had to do a 10-minute stay by themselves before getting the toy. And another group had to be put in a crate for 10 minutes before getting the toy. So, and they wanted to see if there was a difference between how long the stay group worked with the toy before they gave up and how long the crate group worked with the toy before they gave up. What do you think that was? Do you think there was a difference? And if you do, what do you think it was? Well, I'm going to tell you what it was, right? What happened was the dogs who were in the stay spent much less time. Excuse me. The dogs who stayed spent much less time working the toy before they gave up than the dogs who were in the crate. And the theory here, what they were testing actually, the reason they did this experiment was they wanted to test something called willpower depletion, which is basically this idea that when we exercise impulse control, when we override our impulses, we burn energy to do that. Now, the energy that we primarily use for that is glucose. If you're in ketosis, that's a different answer, but that's a whole other issue that we're going to get to, that we're not going to get to in this video. When you are exercising impulse control, your brain is burning glucose. And we know with humans that you can see glucose levels drop as they have to do tasks that require a lot of concentration, a lot of impulse control. Well, so this looked promising for that. So what they did with the next experiment was they gave half of the stay dogs a glucose supplement before giving them the toy. And in that case, their levels raised up to about the same as the crate dogs, right? The crate dogs don't have to exercise impulse control because they don't have the option of moving or going anywhere, whereas the crate dogs are exercising impulse control the whole time. So it's a pretty strong some pretty strong evidence. But what does that mean for us as trainers and as dog owners and as whatever we have to interact with dogs, and even for ourselves? What does that mean? It means that our willpower is not infinite. Willpower is a finite resource, and we like to think we have this unlimited supply of it, but we don't. The brain is a biological organ. It's ruled by the laws of physics and chemistry, and it cannot do high power functions without glucose any more than it can operate without oxygen, right? It needs those things. So if you see somebody hanging by a bar and over a chasm and they hold on and they hold on and eventually they, right? You're not going to think, he didn't want it bad enough. He didn't try hard enough, right? But when it comes to willpower, we tend to think that it's just a matter of trying a little bit harder. We don't want to believe that there are physical limitations to our willpower, but there are, and your dog has those too. This is why we always want a training session after the best rep, right? Or we don't want to work puppies too long because they get fatigued. Well, that fatigue is willpower depletion. They end up having a harder time concentrating because that requires willpower. They end up having a harder time focusing and doing the right thing when the right thing is the hard thing, right? And part of training is setting up situations where the dog wants to do one thing but is expected to do another, and guiding them through that process so they can make better choices as they go. So willpower fatigue is a real thing, and it affects behavior in ways that we have to be aware of. If we're not aware of them, we're going to be pushing dogs too hard. And good trainers know this. They know the dog is fatigued. They put them away. But sometimes you get greedy, and sometimes you can start to think of the dog's poor behavior or the dog's repeated mistakes as the dog being stubborn or not trying hard enough, or just being lazy or whatever. And that's a real dangerous place to get to. Always give the dog the benefit of the doubt, especially when you've been working them for a while. And just because it seems like what you're asking them to do is easy doesn't mean it's easy for them. Sometimes they're overcoming a lot of baggage, and sometimes they're trying to solve a puzzle that you think the answer is obvious, but to them it's a lot harder, all right? So be aware of that as you go forward with the dogs. If you're betting on willpower, you're probably going to cause some problems. So we're going to talk a little bit in another video about what we do with that now that we know that that's an issue, and how to make reliability that lasts over time without getting that willpower fatigue. All right, so that's it for now, guys. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.